Hi, everybody. Welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. My name is Jared. You might recognize this website that I'm on. This is an article by the Interpreter Foundation. It's called The Past and Future of the Temple Lot in Independence, Jackson County, Missouri. And I've referenced this part of this paper a number of times that talks about the Independence Visitor Center because up until now, this was the only place that I knew of that talked about the fact that this was built to become part of the New Jerusalem, to be one of the 24 temples. If you're new to what I'm saying, this is the original plan for New Jerusalem. Okay, in the center of the city, there would have been 24 temples. This is the original plan, but then there was a revised plan, and you can see the 24 temples right here. And so it seems to me, based on what I've seen, that the Independence Visitor Center would be temple number 13 right here. Okay, and so the first time that I learned about this, and the only place I knew that really talked about this, was here in this article. And what they do is they go to the diary of Alvin Dyer, and I talked about him in the last video, how he was an apostle. He wasn't added to the Quorum of the 12. He was outside the Quorum of the 12, and then he joined the first presidency as a counselor, and he had this special mission in Missouri. And it was during his time that the Independence Visitor Center was built, and they also beautified Far West, and he purchased land in, it was under him that the church purchased land in Adamondiaman. He did a lot of stuff with the Missouri sites. And so we have this part of his diary where he's talking about the Independence Visitor Center being built to be part of the 24 temple complex. Right now it's a visitor center. In the future, it's going to be renovated and turned into one of those temples. And so you have this portion right here, or this excerpt from his diary, and then you have this one. So it skips around, and you can see the 3 dots right here and the 3 dots right here. So it skips around quite a bit. And I've always wondered what is said in between here, and what's said in between this portion and this portion. Are there more details? It turns out there are. There's a lot more details. And I didn't know about this until just today, as I was researching for that previous video. So for whatever reason, the University of Virginia, they have a Mormon studies program, and they have this website. It's called David O. McKay Diary Excerpts. Okay. David O. McKay Diaries. And so what we're talking about, there's a picture of it right here. I wish that I owned this, the physical copies, but you can see volume 90, 92, 93, 97. I don't know how far it goes, but let me just read a little bit here so you know what we're looking at. David O. McKay served as president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints from 1951 to 1970 and was a very influential religious leader and educator. His diaries, which shed light on the church's transformation throughout the 20th century, were generously donated by Gregory A. Prince to UVA in 2021. Again, I don't know why to the University of Virginia, but whatever, it's fine. They are a valued part of Mormon Studies library collection. To facilitate access to the rich content found in McKay's diaries, we are publishing excerpts here. The entries were manually copied and organized by Dr. Prince in preparation for his book, David O. McKay and the Rise of Modern Mormonism, co-written with William Robert Wright. So I wish we had full access to this. I wish it was all digitized somewhere, the entire thing. But what they did is they took all these different topics like RLDS, sacrament, science, BYU, communism, so on and so forth. They have one here for Alvin Dyer because it seems like there's excerpts from his diary that have been added to David O. McKay's diary for some reason. I guess because they worked really closely together when it comes to these lands in Missouri. There's one here for Missouri. So it's really cool. I think there's a lot of gems here. I think that because of what I found for Alvin Dyer, and that's what we're going to look at right here. Before we do, let's just visit the Flood the Earth Challenge. I still need to update it. It's been a couple days, but we're at 8,796 copies of the Book of Mormon shared so far. We're trying to get to 10,000. And we have 1,005 people that have joined the challenge, and now we're shooting for 5,000. 5,000. So if you haven't already, please join the challenge. It's a motivator tool. It's not a study. I'm not trying to just track random shares of the Book of Mormon or baptisms. It's a motivator tool. So if somebody's If you gave somebody the Book of Mormon, and as a result of the challenge, they met with the missionaries, and as a result of the challenge, they were baptized, then let me know, put it in the comments, or send me an email, and make sure to include #flood. Okay? So good job, everybody. Keep up the good work. Okay, so when I first saw this right here, I thought that you had to probably get a physical copy of the diary, go to the church history library or BYU or something like that, because it wasn't digitized. But I'm so glad to know that it has been with the University of Virginia. So check this out. Okay. So Monday, December 5th, 1966, report of visit with President David O. McKay. And I'm going to skip by Elder Alvin R. Dyer. I arrived at the president's apartment at 8 a.m. and was admitted by his nurse. I was with the president for 1 hour. I better zoom in so it's easier. Okay. I was with the president for 1 hour, leaving the apartment at 9:02 a.m. President McKay was in his study when I arrived, and upon seeing me, beckoned me to come into his study. He said he was glad to see me and was happy that I came. He asked me to pull up a chair, which I did very close to him so that he could hear of the purpose of my visit. The president looked wonderful, better than I remember him on my last visit. His eyes were clear and he spoke distinctly. He recalled our visit to Adamondiaman and Far West, Missouri, some 5 months ago, stating that he would never forget that visit and how impressed he was. Now, I've had this own experience within the last couple months. As you know, I've been sharing it on the channel. I've been sharing it on Facebook. I have pictures of all these different places: Liberty Jail, the Temple Lot, the Independence Visitor Center, Kirtland, also Adamondiaman. So I know exactly what he feels as we're reading it here. And I know a lot of you do too. If you have a chance, it will be worth it to you to go to these places. Please go there. Take your family, especially if you have kids. It will leave a lasting impression on you. But here we're hearing about David O. McKay's experience. And by the way, there's a lot of entries before this talking about him going to Adamondiaman and what he saw and what he said there. Also, it's here where we find out from these diaries that I did a post on the Facebook page and also the community tab talking about the fact that Far West is the site where Cain killed Abel, and that's why it's such a holy spot of ground, and why someday there's going to be a temple there. We learned that from what we're reading right here from David O. McKay's diary. He's the one that said that. I think he referred to Joseph Smith actually as having said that first. I'm not sure, but this is one source where we find that out. Okay, I first mentioned the property at Adamondiaman that the church was purchasing, including Spring Hill. And by the way, Spring Hill, that's where the city was going to be built, and that's where the temple was going to be built as well, in the middle of the city, Spring Hill. That's at Adamondiaman. It reported to him that the church legal department has processed the matter, and that the money was sent to the land agent about 2 weeks ago, and that the church would soon hold title to the property. Very important piece of land, that whole area. Spring Hill, Tower Hill, the valley of Adamondiaman. Okay, the president expressed his gratification that this had been done. Skipping down. In the letter, the church is asked to lease a segment of church property on South Pleasant Street. So this is talking about Independence, Missouri. For a substantial period of time to the Boys Club on the basis of a token rental payment. Suggesting also that the church might be willing to make a contribution to the building program of the club. I explained to the president that the property was not part of the temple land. Okay, so let's just talk about this really quick. I've talked about this before. The church owns this land right here, this big piece of land, right? And for a long time, it remained undeveloped. It was just a vacant piece of land. And so the City of Independence was like, okay, what are you guys doing here? Are you not going to use this? We could use this. And so this is why we now have the Independence Visitor Center. We also have the Stake Center right there. But that was not always the case. Okay, so in this case, he says, I explained to the president that the property for the Boys Club was not on the temple land. The temple land is this right here. Because remember, This was the original plan, 24 temple complex. The Church of Christ temple lot owns this one, the lot for temple number 11, which would be the main temple, is my understanding. The Community of Christ owns like this area right here, where these temples would go. They also own like part of this because this is where their the auditorium is. So they also own it. So we need to get a lot of this land if we're going to, build these 2 blocks and have the 24 temples. Okay, but going back to this, so we're talking about some other piece of land for the boys club. Okay, but that the request posed a serious problem to the church, not so much for the particular piece of property requested, but that the entire vacant property holdings of the church in Independence, all of them, and particularly the temple land, consisting of about 25 acres, was vulnerable to such request as the one made by the officers of the boys club. I recalled to the president the situation that faced the church some 12 or 13 years ago, when a substantial part of our land there, all temple land property, was asked for a long lease type arrangement to build a senior high school. So the city wanted to build a high school there because we weren't doing anything with that land. Again, the temple land right here, a high school. The church got off the hook on this one pending a possible condemnation of the property by contributing $50,000 toward the construction of the Van Horn High School on Truman Avenue. Mayor Weatherford of Independence told me that because of the generosity of the church, that so long as he was mayor, no effort would be made to gain the use of any of the vacant church property. But I explained to the president that Weatherford is no longer mayor. Upon the request of President McKay as to what we should do in the matter, I suggested the erection of a church building on our segment of our segment of the temple land at Walnut and River Streets to serve a threefold purpose. 1, the erection of our own building would tend to forestall any condemnation of needed property for community purposes. Number 2, it would establish the concern of the church with regard to our sacred belief, that this is the center place of Zion, and that our solemn conviction is that in the time of the Lord, this will be the principal place of gathering in accordance with the revelations. Such action would counter the declarations of the RLDS that the so-called Utah Church, as they refer to us, are no longer interested in the center place. They have placed particular stress upon this since we traded them 4 lots of the temple land properties for a small lot in Nauvoo. Now, I did not know this before. Did you know that? I guess we owned some more of the temple land that I guess the Community of Christ now owns. Maybe it was over here where the auditorium is. Maybe it's over here. I have no idea. But obviously, when the church makes big decisions like this, it's under it's under the Lord, right? The Lord inspires leaders of the church to do what they do. So I guess it was okay to do, but it's unfortunate from my point of view that we lost that land, but I don't question it. But so you have this problem, you have these churches over here, and you also have our own church looking at our beliefs and like, well, do you believe that this was supposed to be New Jerusalem or no? And you guys, there's people now that they don't realize that that's still the plan. And I can understand some people just don't do enough research, or some people, they misinterpret scriptures. There's people that'll read the Doctrine and Covenants and say, oh, well, we were excused from doing this, so it's no longer required. No, it is. It is still required. You can go to my spreadsheet called Quotes, Common Misconceptions, and I have scriptures, and I have all sorts of quotes: John Taylor, Orson Pratt, James E. Talmage, George Q. Morris, Joseph Fielding Smith, Alvin R. Dyer, Russell M. Nelson, Marion G. Romney, Bruce R. McConkie, and the list goes on, talking about the fact that the plan still is to build the New Jerusalem, and there will be not just one temple, but 24 temples there in the future. That has not changed. And this is further evidence of that, what we're reading right now. Number 3, that such a building used as a Bureau of Information. That's just another name for a visitor center. So that such a building used as a visitor center could affirm to the RLDS and the world that we are vitally interested in the center place of Zion, and also the areas round about Liberty, the Liberty Jail, far west, and Adamondiaman. That sites for 3 temples have already been dedicated. So that would be in reference to far west, because it has the cornerstones laid there. Adamondiaman. I learned from Tamara that it's not that there are cornerstones at Adamondiaman for a temple, but the temple block, like the block that the temple would be on, had been dedicated by Brigham Young. And then, of course, the temple lot right here, right? And you can see the outline of where the temple would be. And they have like the cornerstones there. Well, actually, they have the cornerstones inside the little visitor center, but they have it like marked right here. Okay, so that sites for the 3 temples, Adamondiaman, Far West, Independence, have already been dedicated, that the destiny of the church, the return of the lost tribes, etc., will center in that area, as the Lord has declared. The building and purpose of temples could be highlighted in the visitor center and other essential elements of the restoration. We discussed the fact that the church, to protect its heritage, its temple land properties, and our destined future, should now move to make this evident to those in and out of the church in preparation for the day, in accordance with the will of the Father and the Son, the law of the kingdom of God at a future time concerning the revelations that will go forth from that place. I mentioned to President McKay that there were some in the church who felt that we would not return there. And that's unfortunate. It still continues today. I think people think in like worldly terms, and it's like, no, that's just something in the past. Like it was just a failed venture. No, that site was identified by the Lord. This is where the Garden of Eden was. That's why this is here. It's not just like an arbitrary location. It was revealed by revelation. This is the site of the Garden of Eden. And Adamondiaman is where Adam and Eve went after they were after they were expelled from the Garden of Eden. That was their residence. And far west is where Cain killed Abel. Okay. So, okay, continuing. His comment about this was that the revelations confirm the return to the center place as a reality. We spoke of the fact that every president of the church, at one time or another, had confirmed this in their own expressions. Now, I would have to somehow track this down. I'm trying to, and whenever I come across a quote, I put it here. I'm reorganizing this spreadsheet, but this is the old format. It's going to change over time. But I'm collecting these quotes. It's been said over and over and over again. I have John Taylor. That's one president of the church. Joseph Smith. Well, I don't have anything for him yet, but you have Joseph Fielding Smith. Okay, and others. President Nelson. So I wish I could find all those quotes. And over time, maybe I will. Continuing, I read to President McKay a part of a letter from J.L. Verhey, once a prominent leader of the RLDS in the Northwest, now a member of our church, who made the statement, quote, "What I'd like to know is, why doesn't the church do something with the property at Independence, Missouri? Is it still the place of Zion, and will the saints gather there again? All the books and pamphlets in the world wouldn't do one mite in comparison with improvements at Independence." So you guys, it wasn't just to stop the city of Independence from taking the land, but it's also to like show to us that this is still an important place. It's still where New Jerusalem is going to be. They don't say it on every tour, but the first tour that we took, the senior missionary, he gave us the tour of the center, and he talked about that fact that this is the New Jerusalem. So again, if you think that that the plan has changed, you need to tell somebody to tell the missionaries here to stop saying that on the tour. But that's not the case. It is the New Jerusalem. It still is. Okay, continuing. Here's just a couple other things that I highlighted. The president was most receptive to the whole idea and expressed himself several times as to his appreciation to me for bringing the matter to his attention, and asked, as I left him, that I pursue the matter at once and report. Skipping down, I expressed to the president how well he looked and that he was the most amazing man I had ever known. I told him that his influence on my own life was most predominant. I assured him that each day my prayers were that he would live to consummate this great work here upon the earth. Both of our eyes became moist, as there seemed to be a feeling of common understanding. It was an inspiring experience. I just thought that was nice. Okay, here we are. Report on the visit with President David O. McKay, February 1st, 1967. Apartment office of President McKay in the Hotel Utah. And this again is Elder Alvin R. Dyer. Number 1, property at Adamonte-Yaman. Elder Dyer reported to President McKay that the church was now in possession of the deed of ownership of Spring Hill, it's very key, and the small valley of Adamonte-Yaman, and other land connected with these, some 140 acres at Adamonte-Yaman in Daviess County, Missouri. Elder Dyer stated that the church now owns 38 other acres, including Tower Hill, and that's a key site as well. Tower Hill, Spring Hill. Spring Hill would be the city. Tower Hill is where you had one of the altars. One of Adam's altars was at Tower Hill. The other one is at Spring Hill. Bringing to a total approximately 180 acres now owned by the church at this sacred place, which is important for the future of the church. Because we know that one of the main gatherings before the second coming is Adamonte-Yaman. I have a playlist about Adamonte-Yaman. I have reason to believe that the church as a whole will not know when it happens, or they'll participate in it through conference and just not know it was part of that meeting. Watch my playlist. I'm not going to address any comments about that. Watch my playlist, go to my spreadsheet, quotes A through Z, and go to Adamonte-Yaman. I have many reasons to believe that. Okay, so here's the valley right here. When you go there, it actually looks pretty big, and you can't really get a sense of it from this picture. But this is a very steep hill that goes down, and you can't get a sense of it from the picture. But here's the valley. The church currently, I guess, leases it out to a couple brothers to farm the land. So it's being used for growing crops. But here you have this, and then you walk down the trail. Well, and basically I think this area here is Tower Hill, but you walk down the trail and it's still Tower Hill. So, and there's Tamara. She's the one that let us stay at her place to come visit Adamonte-Yaman, and she gave us a tour, and it was really great. Thank you, Tamara. Okay, going back to this, skipping down. Number 2, Independence, Missouri. In light of a direct assignment given by President McKay to Elder Dyer, a report was made by him pertaining to the progress being made on the progress in the preparation of schematic drawings for a proposed Bureau of Information, or Visitor Center, to be erected on that part of the temple land at Independence, Missouri, owned by the church. Elder Dyer stated that a topographical survey had been made of the land and now received. In consequence of this, the church building committee, in consultation with Elder Dyer, were preparing schematic plans for the building. Emil Fetzer has been assigned by the building committee to work with the project. He's the architect. It was reported to the president that in the preparation of the schematics, that consideration was given to the information on the plat plan of the city of Zion prepared by the prophet Joseph Smith. He's referring to this. They consulted this. Why? Because they were about to build one of these buildings. Okay, one of the temples. This plan includes a complex of 24 buildings in addition to the temple of the New Jerusalem. Now, before you're like, look, it says buildings, not temple. Later on, they talk about the fact that they're temples. When you go to the Joseph Smith, papers and other places, they're temples. Okay. In fact, right here, revisions to the city center were also made. The 2 central blocks each contain 12 temples. Okay. These are temples. They're multi-purpose temples. So, but it seems like there's a main temple. But we're going to get to that in just a minute. There's like a primary temple, like a headquarters temple or something like that. With the idea that as precisely as possible, conforming to the prophet's plan and the revelations as to size and possible location, that the building which we are now proposing for erection as a bureau or visitor center could later fit the need of one of the buildings of the temple complex. Okay, so it's not just a visitor center. It's much, much more than that. Later on, President again talked about the trip we took together to Missouri last year with President Smith. He indicated how much more important the consecrated places in Missouri seemed to him now. You guys, I'm telling you, it's happened with David O. McKay. He can't stop thinking about it. He keeps thinking back to his visit to those sites. And I am in that same situation right now. Please go if you can. Please. It will be worth your money. You'll always remember it. Okay, continuing. I ventured that if it were possible, all the general authorities should go to Missouri, to Independence, Liberty, Far West, and Adirondack. And then perhaps their concept of what transpired there in the early days of the church in the laying the foundation of Zion would be broadened. Yeah, that is what happens. That is what happens when you visit those places. Continuing, but I said, if all the brethren were to go at one time, the members of the church hearing of it would think that the millennium was here for sure. The president enjoyed this and had a good humored laugh. So look, they're like, we should have everybody go. We should have all the general authorities go. They need to go there to like truly understand. You guys, there's something about actually being there. And it's not just like physically being present. That is part of it. It becomes more like real to you, but it's not just that. It's the spirit that you feel there. Here's Liberty Jail. It's the spirit. You can feel the spirit there at these places. It's incredible. Here's the temple lot. There's the Community of Christ temple, but then, oh my gosh, there's my boots. And then here's the Church of Christ temple lot. It's a different and a smaller church than the Community of Christ. And yeah, this is where going to be. This is where that excuse me, that main temple is going to be, is my understanding. Okay, back to this. I reported to the president that by the end of February, we would have ready for his consideration the schematic drawings for the temple proposed for our temple land property in Independence, Missouri. He seemed pleased with this report and said he was anxious to see them. Yeah, how could you not be? Later on, President McKay then asked me what position I held in the church, and I answered that I was an assistant to the 12. He then asked me how many assistants there were, and I replied 12. The president then looked directly into my eyes and hesitated, then said, have you been sustained as an assistant? My answer was yes, that I had been an assistant to the 12 for 8 years, being called to that position while I was serving as a counselor to Joseph T. Bentley in the Young Men's Mutual Improvement Association. He answered, yes, I remember that occasion. The president again looked into my face, and my eyes caught his. It seemed that several moments passed before he spoke again. And then he said, Brother Dyer, you are to be sustained as an assistant to the 12. I was a little perplexed at this statement and again mentioned that I had been an assistant for 8 years. What he meant was a higher position. More than an hour had passed, and we had spent a most profitable time together. The president said that he was very pleased with our conversation and was so happy that I had come to sit down with him. I told him how grateful I was to have been invited by him to come, that to be in his presence was a real joy. I told him how happy I was that we now had the deed to Spring Hill at Adirondack, but that we never would have obtained it if it hadn't been for him. For some of the brethren opposed the purchase. Now, you're never going to have everybody that completely agrees. And I assume that when he says brethren, he's talking about Quorum of the 12. It's okay. What was supposed to happen did happen. And I'm sure that they changed their minds over time. But initially they opposed. But that's interesting. His answer was, yes, I know, but I am pleased that we now have the deed. In parting, he blessed me and grasped my hand and held it for quite some time, saying again that he had enjoyed my visit. Now, what happened, you guys, is Alvin R. Dyer, he was assistant to the 12, and then he became an apostle, but not part of the Quorum of the 12. And then he was part of the first presidency. He was a counselor in the first presidency. I'd have to double check this, but I think there were 3 counselors. Like he had the first counselor, second counselor, and then he was just considered a counselor in the first presidency. He had a very unique position. And then after he was released, they put him in the first Quorum of the 70. He didn't go to the Quorum of the 12. He was still an apostle, but he ended up in the first Quorum of the 70. So he was a very special person, Alvin R. Dyer. Okay, later on. Okay, now this is the part. this is the part where on this article, we just have these two short excerpts. Now I'm about to read you the entire thing. This is just so awesome. Friday, March 10th, 1967. Report of meeting with David O. McKay, or President David O. McKay, on March 10th, 1967 at his Hotel Utah apartment office. Prepared by Alvin R. Dyer. On this day at 9:40 a.m., in company with Mark B. Graff and Emil Fetzer of the Church Building Committee, I met with President David O. McKay. I met with President David O. McKay. So remember, Emil Fetzer, he's the architect. I don't know who Mark B. Graff is, but Emil Fetzer is the architect. The purpose of the meeting was to report to the president on an assignment given to me to give consideration to the erecting of a Bureau of Information on the temple land property owned by the church at Independence, Missouri. I reported that Emil Fetzer and I had made a trip to Independence to study the lay of the land and had made arrangements while there for a topographical or contour map to be made that could be used for architectural reasons. Emil Fetzer presented schematic drawings. I mentioned to the president that at the present time, the church owned about 18 acres of the original 63 plus acres of temple land property, which had been dedicated by the prophet Joseph Smith. So 63 acres. So that's basically, I don't know exactly, but I guess it's like just all this right here. And the church only has 18. But I think that will change in the future. I do. Just like we got the Kirtland Temple, I think things can change pretty quickly. A plat plan of the temple property was shown the president, with that segment belonging to the church indicated. So they must have been looking at this, the New Jerusalem plat. An overlay sheet was placed in position representing a study of the temple complex, which in the time of the Lord will be built. Okay? Will be built upon the whole of this sacred place of land. Upon the whole. So don't get the idea that the plan has changed, it's Salt Lake City. No. And don't think that it's now, this is all we own right here, so now it's just going to be in this place. No. At some point in the future, maybe in the millennium, you could say that the city of New Jerusalem has been started. We have the people there. We have a stake. We have a temple in waiting. So it's started. And probably there's going to be a transition period, and maybe not until the millennium will we own all this land. But at some point, the original plan will be implemented. It's going to be all this right here. Okay. This overlay gives evidence of the size of the temple complex and how it might possibly set upon the temple land. I explained to the president that the prophet Joseph Smith in the early days sent a plat plan of the city of Zion, or New Jerusalem, which included the temple complex from Kirtland, Ohio, to the brethren in Jackson County, Missouri. This plan was prepared in the prophet's own hand, in that the original was in the church historian's office. Here it is. Conjointly with Brother Fetzer, we reported to the president that our study in this direction was to undertake, if we could, to ascertain which of the temple buildings, temple buildings, designated would presumably be located on that part of the temple land that the church owned. This we had arrived at and had determined which of these locations would be concentrated upon for the erection of a building for the purpose intended. The temple buildings, except the temple where the Lord will officially appear. Now, we don't have this in this account right here. So this is this is new. We've already been reading some new stuff, but let me read that again. The temple buildings, except the temple where the Lord will officially appear, as spoken of in the Revelations, are represented on the prophet's plan as houses, buildings, or temples of certain orders of the priesthood. There will be 25 buildings in all, occupying about 35 acres. So this is new. To me, this is new. 25. I don't know why that's not represented here. This is the last plan that I know of for New Jerusalem, and as you can see, they number it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 all the way to 24 right here. 24 would be in the northeast corner of this block. We talked about the fact, let me pull this up really quick. New Jerusalem 24 temple complex. So here's the thing I did to simplify it. You have these temples over here for the Aaronic priesthood, these temples over here for the Melchizedek priesthood, and they correspond with the different offices in the priesthood: deacons, teachers, priests. And then this one, I don't know. I guess it doesn't say bishop, but I guess it would probably be for bishop. And then over here, elders, and then evangelical, or in other words, patriarch, and then apostolic, and then the first presidency. So that's how these are ordered. And these are the names of the temples. There's not a 25th that's indicated. You can find the names of the temple on this if you go to page 2. So I don't know. In this original plan, before it was revised, you had the 24 temples, and it was kind of ordered differently. And then you had a third block right here, which according to the revised plan, it says that that third block, it says, okay, the revised plat, however, omitted a third central block that was to contain the bishop's storehouses. So the bishop's storehouses would have been right here, but then that was changed, and all you have are the 2 blocks, and it doesn't show a 25th temple, so I don't know really what that's referring to. I wish I had more information about that, but that's new. That is new. That is what is not in this article right here. So it's interesting. I'm not accusing them, by the way. Okay. The hope of all this is to be as realistic as possible in the erection of a building, the basic structure of which would be used at a future date as part of the temple complex, but to be designed and erected now as a Bureau of Information or Visitor Center. Brother Fetzer identified on the overlay sheet the particular building location which we proposed to use, which someday perchance could be a part of the overall complex. Brother Garf stated to the president that he understood our proposal now was for one building properly situated on our temple land, which would be used for a Bureau of Information, that no other structure or any part of the temple complex is presumed. President McKay was very intent as he listened to the presentation, asking a number of questions concerning the size and facility of the structures, or the structure being discussed. In answering to these questions, Brother Fetzer presented to the president several schematic drawings of floor plans, elevation perspective, access roads, parking areas, etc. These drawings indicated that the proposed structure would be 2 stories high with a floor area dimension of 61 feet by 87 feet, which dimension is the same as revealed to the prophet Joseph Smith, or the prophet Joseph, as the size of the complex buildings. The entrance to the Bureau would be from Walnut Street, and it would be set back 171 feet from the street. Is that feet? Yeah, that's feet. Okay. Again, if you go here on the Joseph Smith papers, this is the revised plan of the house of the Lord, and this would have been the temple for New Jerusalem. And it says here, this house for the presidency is to be built first in Zion and is to be 97 feet long and 61 feet wide within the walls. So there are those measurements. It's a little bit different because here it says 97, but over here it says 87. So I don't know if there's like a typo in the diary or whatever. I don't know, but it's by revelation. Okay. This right here is not the invention of people from the 50s and 60s. Well, I guess from the 60s. It's not just like a good idea. It's this size, length, width, and height, because that's what was revealed to Joseph Smith. The basic structure, not talking about this like arcade right here. The basic structure. Okay. All right. Continuing. The president inquired further as to the basic use of the building. I told him that it would be used exclusively as a Bureau of Information, and that within the walls of this structure, the concentrated message could deal with the laying of the foundation of God's work here in the latter days, at the very place where the church became involved in the early commandments of the Lord in this purpose. that it would stand as a place of testimony and record unto the world, including those of the RLDS, now the Community of Christ. Urgent need to erect building on property. I called to the president's attention that because our property on the temple land had nothing on it, it was almost constantly being sought after by educational and other civic agencies for building purposes. It has therefore upon occasion been threatened with condemnation procedures to acquire it, or in other words, eminent domain. I mentioned the experience with the Van Buren Heights, so he talks about the $50,000. Then later he says the RLDS have particularly used these ideas to their own advantage. So I don't know if that sounds like basically the RLDS were trying to stop us from building anything there, or wanting us to lose the land, because it's like pushing us out essentially, right? Which is interesting because we just acquired the Kirtland Temple from them. And then continuing, I mentioned to the president that it had been reported to us that in 1965, 2,000 Mormons became members of the RLDS. In 1965, so just 2 years before. Over 100 of these in Salt Lake City, where they recently dedicated a chapel and are now building another. Mention also had been made to the president of their activity at the Utah State Fair in 1966. Now, I want to say something really quick. We see what has happened over time. In the 1980s, so 15, 20 years later, they had a schism. They became the Community of Christ, and it seems like at that time, a lot of their doctrines were kind of reinterpreted, and the people that held on to the more literal aspects of the religion, they broke off. And they're currently this constellation of branches. I think they're called the Restoration Branches, but they're not really centralized. It's just kind of like a confederation of different congregations. And then the Community of Christ continued on united, but with much more watered down doctrine. It seems less literal, more philosophical or metaphorical, that type of thing, right? I want to read something really quick that Joseph Fielding Smith said in Doctrines of Salvation. He had a lot to say. He had a lot to say about what he called the reorganites, excuse me, which referred to, I guess, primarily the RLDS Church at the time, now the Community of Christ, but there were other splinter groups, and he kind of talked about them too. And he says this here, like I said, he had a lot to say about them. So if you're interested in this is in volume 1 of Doctrines of Salvation. You can access this on archive.org and just do a search for the word reorganite. And there's a plethora of search results. Like I said, he had a lot to say. Remember, Joseph Fielding Smith, he was a descendant, I think, of Hiram Smith, I believe. You guys can correct me. I'm not really good with their genealogy, but he was related to the prophet Joseph Smith. So, and the RLDS Church broke off, and its first president, its first what they call prophet president, was Joseph Smith's son, Joseph Smith III. So I don't know if it was more personal to Joseph Fielding Smith, why he felt very passionate about the RLDS, but there may have been kind of this family thing going on, or just in his feelings. But he said here, under the section called Destiny of Reorganite Church, I'm going to skip down, where among the so-called factions, quote unquote, where among the so-called factions can you point to one that has accomplished the 100th part of what the followers of Brigham Young have accomplished? They've all practically disappeared, but one. And, that's not entirely true. You have the Church of Christ Temple lot, and you have, smaller ones. But he's referring to the RLDS. So they have all practically disappeared, but one. They have all practically disappeared, but one. Gone to their destruction. And the one that remains will dissolve and disappear as surely as the sun shines. You cannot fight the work of God and prosper. Now, I think this is probably prophetic. That's definitely going to happen sometime during the millennium, because that's what's going to happen to all religions. Everyone's going to, through the process of time, be converted to the church until it fills the entire world, every single person. But if that happens before then, I don't know. It could be. We'll just have to wait and see. But I would say that this is probably prophetic. Okay, let's go back here. The president seemed very surprised of these things, saying, "I had no idea." Talking about the 2,000 people that converted to the RLDS. 3 reasons for the need of the proposed building. I expressed the feeling to the president that I thought there were 3 good reasons why we should undertake to erect the proposed structures. And this is kind of a repeat of what we already read. But let me just read this part right here. Okay. The president at this point rather firmly expressed himself that we ought not lose control of any of that land, and asked that we again go over our proposal to him. This we did step by step. As mentioned before, the president was very intent about the whole matter and wanted to have it all clear in his mind. Brother Garf stated that it looked to him that the decision that must be made at this time was whether the church intended to go forward or to give up and relinquish our place. I commented that as the true church, it would be unthinkable to give up our place. And the president gave affirmation to this. I'm going to skip that part. You can pause and read it if you want. A joyous time. I'm going to just go down to right here. We all felt good about the decision he made. To me, it was another step in fulfilling the Lord's work in the consecrated and dedicated land of Jackson County, Missouri, with many great developments to follow. Well, we just saw one last month in the acquisition of the Kirtland Temple. So the Kirtland Temple, it's not in Missouri, but it was meant to be. It fulfilled prophecy. We did a video about that, how it fulfilled prophecy at least a couple different times. And I think the same thing's going to happen here, and it might surprise us how soon it happens. The community of Christ, okay, because we need this land too. This is going to be part of the 24 Temple Complex. We just read that. We need this. They are in dire straits right now. Now, they just made a lot of money from the sale of the Kirtland Temple, but that's only going to last for so long. We've gone over their financials. They're very concerned about the younger members of their church because they're not really paying tithing. Because they don't really stress that as much as like a commandment, like you need to do that to have a temple recommend, because they don't have temple recommends. The temples that they have are not temples like our temples. So it's not really stressed, and the world is becoming more and more secular, and churches are starting to disintegrate. So anything could happen anytime. We were speculating about the Kirtland Temple, and it still felt like it was just going to be sometime in the future, who knows when. But all of a sudden, one day, it became a reality. And I'm not going to put any limits as to what can happen. And this church over here, the Church of Christ Temple Lot, they're even smaller. So the community of Christ is about 250,000 people. And the Church of Christ Temple Lot, if I remember right, on the Wikipedia page, I think they're only like 1,700 strong, or maybe it's like 17,000. I'd have to double check, but much smaller, so I would imagine it'd probably be harder to stay together as a church with the shifting tides, with the social landscape or the social waters, whatever metaphor you want to use, what I'm trying to say. And that infiltration from the outside, these like secular ideas and philosophies are infiltrating every church, including our own. But ours will prevail, whereas these ones won't. So let's just keep an eye on it. Let's be aware of what's going to happen in the future. Now we've gained so much more, so much more information about this. One of the biggest things to me is that there's, 25 buildings or temples. I wish I could find out more about that. But there was a lot of talk about this, and it all had to do with keeping that land, because we do still recognize this as the center place. The center stake, the New Jerusalem. Okay, that's going to be it for this one. If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, like this video if you liked it, leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Also make sure to share it, and I'll talk to you guys later.